Clapping.
Clapping.
Clapping and slapping.
Straight up clapping.
First question. How do you clap so good?
Sorry, can't tell you that. It's NDA.
Hey pals, welcome to a little Q&A video. I'm Bryson McBee. I'm joined by Tottomori.
AKA Wade.
We're developing a little video game called Songs of the Shore. It's going to be coming out here in a little demo form on Steam soon. There'll be all the links if you want to go look at that in the description. But we just wanted to make a quick video to kind of talk about the game a little bit and answer some questions. We've mostly just been teasing through short little videos and various music releases. But we are making like a whole game, and we'd love to share more about it. But yeah, I guess. Was there anything
let's
else?
start.
Well, starting with our first question, it comes from Gavin is my name. He asked, how many people are working on the game? And that's just two. That's two of us.
Yeah, we're two people. And it's us.
Last time I checked, it's two.
We have some friends that get little things.
Yeah.
And help out with little things.
I originally thought of the game as being like a sort of a collage to be able to feature as many of our friends as possible musically. And as we've worked on it more, it feels like it got to a point that it really became such a genuine and fully formed depiction of both of our creative visions. And I think it's become much more characteristic of Wade's creative styles in a lot of ways. And so we moved away from that idea more into like it really just feeling like a amalgam of both of our creative touches on it.
Collaborative art project at this point, more than collaborative.
Yeah, I think initially starting it felt like I wanted it to be this very small form factor thing where it would just be fun to put it out for free, and it would have like a bunch of my friends featuring a little, like they'd all design their own musical stem for a shell, and that would be what the game was. But it just ended up lining up with so many things that we really enjoyed working on that at this point we've put so much time and creative energy into it that it's hard to say that it resembles too much what I originally imagined in that way. But not that I would change anything about that. I think it's really cool how it's come together in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think just the overall project has taken both of our creative visions and put them together in a really interesting and unique way. So I'm really happy that we moved in that direction.
Yeah,
with the whole thing.
It's also being that with indie games we move very fast. There's not a lot of like having to check in with people and like reaching out for updates or getting on calls to advise people. We're all, we live in different time zones, so we're only ever even awake for 4 hours at the same time.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time we're just working on our own. If there's any idea, like it's not that we would wait for the next day to like check in about it. It's just you do it. You make your own decision about how to do it or what to do. And
I think it's quite fun to look back at the little bits and bobs we have gotten from friends for the game. Yeah. And some of them might not be very usable anymore because we have changed so much about the project up until this point. So like our original thoughts and ideas might have changed quite a bit more than we first anticipated.
Yeah. The style has formed in a way that it is not exactly the same as like what I might have been pitching to people at the start. But yeah, it's become it's very fun working as just two developers on this game.
Things happen quickly, and you can kind of go wild with creative ideas.
Next question here comes from Eric Canvas, who asks, this is such a beautiful concept, but how did you start? The coding or the art? And
both.
In a way. I like this idea because it's interesting to think about how projects like this start, because originally it just started from our inspirations and wanting to make something in this aesthetic. And I think it's hard to know what you can create from whether it's visually or musically when you don't have the systems built. And I feel like as an artist that came into game development without really any coding experience, it was really interesting to me, like finding developers who use the term like creative coding, because I think every kind of coding is inherently kind of creative, unless you're managing just like optimizations on dictionary analysis or whatever thing like that.
That's for the 2.0 Songs of the Shore update.
Yeah, I mean, I think even that can be creative, but all that to say, like, the way that this game really came together, and I think the way that it came together as quickly as it did, we've been working on it for about 9 months now, but the majority of that time has been invested in things like modeling and actually ideating on what the level design is and the character design and the stories of the characters. Those are the things that take a lot of conversation that feel like you can put a lot of time into, whereas on the programmatic side of things could get mocked up and prototyped very quickly, and from there those things would kind of inform what ideas we might have creatively for what characters we could have, or how the player could interact with different kind of items or models. And so suddenly you have this sort of a laundry list of different things you can make to work with what's happening programmatically. In that way, it's kind of both. It feels like we had the creative idea, and then stuff had happened programmatically. And we
did get a prototype of the like first version of gameplay done quite quickly, without having much to do with the art, but we kind of had the concept in place. So I guess in the early stages there weren't a lot of art direction. It was more like ideas and brainstorming in a gameplay sense, and then from there it kind of formed from that.
Yeah, I think that's what I meant to say, or like, wrap it back around to that idea that the initial prototype came together very quick, and then it was like kind of letting loose on all of the different characters and items and everything we could put in. Ozclaw, very cool artist, asked biggest game inspiration for Songs of the Shore, and I think for me the original idea for the game came from inspiration that I took for games like Animal Crossing. That being an artist that is independent and constantly trying to find a new project to work on, and always with my head down in Blender and things like that, I really enjoyed Animal Crossing, not even as much from like playing it as much as the effect that it has on me, just like putting on videos of people playing it, or putting on like mixes of the soundtrack and just being able to listen to that while I'm working. And I think the very, very early idea of our game was the idea of making a game that actually runs on your computer and is sort of procedurally on its own generating music, whether it's through exploring different environments or collecting items. It would be creating this ambient and sort of immersive soundtrack to in the way that Animal Crossing soundtrack would help me focus on whatever I was working on.
We did start thinking about the game as more of an ambient desktop body. Like we even in the beginning we worked on it more as an HTML project that you could run in your web browser while you did other things. But it very quickly became more, I don't know if it's more interesting, but more,
more
larger,
fun.
More
it was
fun.
More fun than that.
Yeah,
I think
and there's still like pieces of that original idea in the whole project right now. But it's probably a good direction to take to make it something more.
Yeah, I mean we've invested the time into making this whole world and all these characters and all these sort of magical story elements that are exciting to explore. It would feel wrong to not develop it a little further than that, and allowing ourselves to be more creative with it in the way of implementing a larger story and greater features to facilitate like a more interactive gameplay. I think it's felt very natural to transition from what originally was going to be this more idle kind of game where you're
idle desktop to adventure puzzle game. But that's the pipeline.
Yeah, but I think we probably will still release some form of the game that's more idle centric. There's a lot that the computer has to do to render the game in the way that it is right now, and all of the different objects and characters. But we could effectively make what is the ambient music generator through the soundtrack without rendering all that stuff. So there might be another release of that.
Well, I think
I'd love to hear your inspirations.
I think the more we worked on the game, I've taken more inspirations from smaller, like bite-sized games, like A Short Hike and such. And I think just the whole concept kind of works in that kind of ecosystem of smaller games. And we've also taken more and more inspirations about the compactness. Is that a word? Compactness. How compact games like, for example, Animal Well is, and just filling a very small world with as much interest and life as we can. I think that's an interesting part of it. Also, the 2006 hit game Electroplankton has been a big inspiration, so check it out if you haven't. It's good.
Yeah, it's fun games like that give you a lot of ability to participate in the music of the game, like Ocarina of Time and Animal Well and Electroplankton, and I think even Pikmin has some elements like that.
I could see some similarities too.
And Animal Crossing is also in the way that like you could have objects that you interact with that kind of randomly create music. You know, those elements in those games has definitely been hugely inspiring for the systems that we've been building for the player to, you know, solve puzzles through music and sort of just create this ambient soundtrack through collecting different soundtrack elements that all kind of come together.
I also think with the whole like music thing and interacting with things, just overall point and click games, the concept of it, like being able to interact with the world and how it feels to go up to something, click it, and have it kind of interact with you. I think I don't have any particular ones that I'm thinking about, but just the vibe of point and click games is a really big inspiration overall.
On to the next question.
It's Ella.
Yeah.
Just to hi Ella.
Friend of the show, Ella asks, ... who's your favorite NPC and why? :3. Thanks for the question, Ella.
Starting with my probably favorite right now is it's Zingo, and he's this old guy sitting in his porch. He's been a radio technician for most of his life, and you can you can talk to him. He does things.
I think, you know, with the game still in development, we only have so much confidence to share too much about the characters, but Zingo is a cool character. He was probably one of the first like illustrations I thought of to have on like as a character in the game, just to have this sort of gruzzle, or what do you call it?
Grumpy.
This grumpy old man that, you know, has his little cabin, his little like fishing shack on the beach. But it was cool through the development of him. Like I feel like he ended up becoming more of this like technician, and in that way having his own sort of musical connotation of working with radios and things, and
more of a sound worker than a radio or a music worker.
Right. Yeah.
And he's the only like permanent inhabitant of the island as well.
Everyone else is kind of a visitor on the beach.
Visitor, longer time visitor or shorter time visitor.
Yeah.
It depends on who you're talking about.
And I really enjoy Zingo being this character that is more fixated on technology, because we talk a lot about like the overlap between sort of organic sounds and electronic sounds, and whether that's, you know, the idea of like the waves crashing and the sounds from that versus you know, actually walking by a radio signal with a little buzz in it and everything like that. There's a very magical kind of connection there that I think we're always kind of trying to. It
is an interesting just overall theme with the game, with the organic parts, the technological part, and the little more magical things.
Yeah.
I think they marry surprisingly well in the project, because it could have been quite a clashing concept. But somehow it all kind of works together in a quite harmonious way.
Yeah, and Zingo's just a really great catalyst for that kind of connection in the game.
He's just chilling.
I mean, it's a little hard to say, but I think the one that I feel the most confident saying is Bucket Boy, because he feels like probably the most unique character that we've designed for this game, and he personifies a lot of things that I think are sometimes hard to communicate. Which is, you know, this little kid that really fantasizes about being a superhero. He runs around the beach with a bucket on his head, and he is fully convinced that he needs to hide his actual identity, and he's also convinced that there's actually something for him to do on this beach, because he's, you know, watched enough superhero cartoons and read enough comic books to figure that if there's anything for him to do is go fight crime and you know, watch out for evildoers and all that. So it's
a very energetic little guy.
Yeah. And I think he, you know, started as just wanting to have like a funny kind of character, but he really started to come together in a way that I was very inspired by my aunt, who is a teacher, and she talks about her kids having these very ambitious dreams for the future and feeling that they really can, grow up to solve a lot of these problems that, maybe largely because of my aunt's teaching, she embeds in them that's like, you guys are going to save the world someday. And I think that's an exciting thing to think about being a kid with that idea. And, I'm sure a lot of people kind of grow up with that idea, but I thought the best way to depict that through a character is kind of an actual one that is convinced that he is a superhero, as a what's the word? As conceited as that can be, or self-absorbed.
I feel
as
like it's going to be a hard time changing his mind about it as well.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah. Not that I think anybody would want to change his mind, but he's he's for all of those reasons, he's probably my favorite character. He's also just a silly kid running around on the beach. Next one comes from Chippy Zone, another very cool artist, who asks, what would you do if you could start over today? The biggest time sink, etc.
Didn't originally have much of an end goal for the game, and we never really went into pre-production, which just meant we jumped straight into the making of the game. And I don't think I would do it differently. Like, oh no, it's horrible, it didn't work, because we are where we are in the game, and when we have a project we really enjoy working on. But from a logistical standpoint, that it would have been good to just put down everything we were supposed to do in the beginning, and this is the story of a lot of indie games. But it has worked so far quite well. We've scrapped a bunch of stuff and redone a lot of stuff, and a lot of ideas are never really realized because we don't have the end product in such a perfect state in our minds. But it's also a very creative and fun way to work. But that's probably one of mine.
Right. Maybe we would actually lay out a little more clearly all the features that we want to develop. I know that would change a lot on, in my mind, of how I would approach things programmatically had we done a solid scope for the game prior to starting any development. The game has always kind of been in a prototype state. We're always coming up with new features, and they come together very quickly, but it can also sometimes clash with the way that I might have done something so many months ago. And I think that's the case in any game, that as you're further trying to decouple things and make things more modular, you'll invariably find some new feature that is being added that breaks something else. But it's also a very fun way to go about it, and I think had we done the full pre-production process and kind of scoping everything prior to jumping into any of the development, there's probably a lot that would have been more efficient in that way and come together a little quicker. But it also, I feel like we really came into this unencumbered by the idea of a production timeline or a production scope or anything. It really lets us be as wild with our ideas about it as possible, which I'm sure sounds like a nightmare if there's any production managers watching the video. But it is
a very creative way to work, and it feels like it makes a unique game as well. I think with the art aspect as well, most of the assets are hero props. Which means some of them take a lot of work, and some of them haven't really clicked yet either. And it's quite a high, it takes a lot of work. It's a high effort way of working, sort of. It's a labor intensive process, is what I'm trying to say. So working with assets like that is a very labor intensive process, and if the game map was going to be larger and the game was going to be larger, that would not be the approach I would take. But since we do have quite a small scope still on the game area, and we want everything to feel very alive, it kind of works for us. I think as far as what could be a time sink, as the question put it, I think maybe having a firmer idea of the puzzles prior to development probably would have. I think puzzles are something that we end up scoping and then throwing away and doing over and over again. But I also want to mention a kind of a fun thing from I read this book called Ask Iwata on the flight over here, actually, which is a really great book. I really recommend it. But they talk about the Earthbound development process, where they were, I think, a couple years into development, or maybe a few years,
and the team was struggling to find the direction of how the game was supposed to come together. And Iwata came in and actually looked at everything and pitched a couple ideas of a way that they could probably finish the game within 2 years, or they could completely restart the development of like the major game systems and finish it in 6 months and making it a much simpler game, I imagine. And they ended up doing it. Like, they actually just scrapped development and started over. And thinking about that anecdote, like, I consider sometimes like starting over a lot of things in the code base and, you know, allowing the game to maybe have a different systems for the sake of, you know, efficiency and being able to put things together faster. But I don't know that we're exactly at the tipping point that I've lost too much confidence in stuff that I programmed like 9 months ago. But it was an interesting element, because I think, you know, it's funny, this question of like, if you could start over, like, we could, like, and it's something that I haven't, you know, exactly written off. Like, it's a thing I think in a lot of game projects of, you know, what could be done better to start over in a code base. But yeah, as far as ours, I don't think we're quite there yet.
Don't have to be perfect either.
Yeah,
like we're not. This is the first game we make, kind of.
Yeah.
Which does mean that it's not going to be a perfect project, but hopefully good enough for people to enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, I've said it a couple times, but, you know, if the game is half as fun to play as it has been for us to make, like, I think it'll be worth sharing and getting out there. Too. Anyways, moving on to this next question. Next question comes from Hacker Voice, who asked, what has been the favorite thing you've learned so far whilst making the game?
I've realized that I have quite a unique art style in 3D. I realized that it's a very enjoyable style to work in, and I haven't really been able to develop it before, because I've been working with other people or with art direction and stuff. And I think it's a good way of, you know, spreading your wings and trying something new that actually happened to work this time. So I've learned a lot about my process through the whole thing. And also, I would say that it has worked surprisingly well to be a two-person team. And even with the scope we have of the game, it feels like it's moving forward quite quickly in a way that isn't guaranteed in even larger teams. Which means, I think what I want to say with that is just that sometimes it is worth working a bit more and a bit under like stricter conditions with a smaller team and a more like creative vision, rather than being a lot of people and you know, splitting up the workload. Sometimes the more interesting projects actually come from limitations, which I'm a very firm believer of having limitations in your work to just make it more creative and more interesting and more you grow more while doing it. So I think just putting that into practice and actually getting it confirmed for myself has been a lot of fun, but it's been very
I think, I mean, I'd never had the experience of having a project this big, of like working on as a team of just two generally like creatively driven people. I feel like it's been a big learning process of, you know, stepping out of like the role of, you know, having my hands on all of the art. It's been a lot of like mocking things up and kind of sketching, but like really believing that in letting you have your hands on it and do what you want to creatively with it, that it's going to feel more of the world of all of these assets and give it a consistency that, you know, while there's a lot of, you know, creative ideas I might have that you know, will stay very true to, you're also not afraid to like run off with your own idea that you might feel very inspired by. And I think that's been a very cool experience. I
think just overall through the whole development, it's been a lot of bouncing back and forwards, that since we've talked about it before, but since we're in different time zones and don't have a lot of time when both of us are awake, it's a very common process that I wake up, I pull down things from Git, I start the game, and there is something new.
Right.
And then you wake up and you do the same. And it just kind of is a never-ending cycle of things happening to the game, which can be, it's quite fun to wake up to a surprise that works in a project that you're working on. And just not kind of brushing off each other's ideas and visions for the game has been a lot of both fun and I think very...
It presents unique challenges and kind of being willing to run off in any direction that anyone is inspired by. I think it's a unique thing to not be in a game that necessarily has like a producer. And this, we might talk about this in another question, but in being like self-published, self-produced, and just as such a small team, where there might usually be someone like looming over that isn't willing to pay for certain things or doesn't want to invest the time in something and doesn't want to push back a deadline on certain things. We're really committed to just the most fun and creative ideas we can find. And if that sounds like something that is going to be a lot of work, like it really doesn't sound so bad when it sounds fun and inspiring.
No, and often like it might be that you're up late working, get an idea, write a paragraph of something, and I wake up to it and I'm like, I have everything fresh in my head. It's like I'm newly awoken and I'm like quite critical to the idea, being just like, this is cool, but does it fit the game? Is it a good use of our time? Like I just write that down and then send it, and then like later in the day you wake up and it's kind of you've come to your senses about the idea and kind of scale it back, but then scale it up in another way that is more relevant for the game. And I think just not brushing off ideas and being like, no, this is a bad idea, or we shouldn't spend time on this. It's never really been like that in the project, even though we're sometimes critical to things and considering if they fit or not. It's interesting to see that everything kind of makes it in some little part somehow. There's
no bad idea. There's just the ideas that we eventually find a better one, I think. And I think as just another cool quote from the Ask Iwata book, he mentions the thought of, the real value in a game is understanding like what it needs to be. And I think that's a thing that we're always kind of becoming more and more familiar with, of like what this game needs to be and the way the characters need to be represented, and everything
feels almost like it's slowly getting a life of its own. Like it tells us where it's going, and that kind of decides what we do with it. Which is a very interesting way to work.
Especially the characters and the themes. It feels like it's starting to feel more like playing a game in some ways than developing it, as we start to understand the characters as people that we might know in real life and connecting them with our own experiences. It becomes very clear when an idea does not line up with those people in our head or the events that we're imagining. So that's been an interesting thing. I mean, a little bit of a tangent from of what we've learned, but this is my first big game I've worked on, and the first time that I've put so much time as a team into something. And of course, with all of that, there's so much that you can learn. Next question comes from Lex Vionda. Asks, what engine do you work in, and how has that engine shaped what you've been able to do? So we made the game in the Godot game engine. I've had a little bit of experience working in it prior to this project. I also worked in Unity a little bit for some commission work, and I really didn't enjoy Unity for a lot of quality of life issues that I've heard some have been fixed up to this point, but Godot, if you're familiar with it as someone who might participate in game jams, it is an engine packed with quality of life kind of things for making games very quickly and having all of the tools you might need to make something functional very quickly. And that made it a very fun engine to start in. And I think a lot of there's honestly a lot of things in the game that might have been shaped by things that are made very easy by Godot, like the use of sub-viewports to pop up different objects that you can interact with.
The audio system is surprisingly robust as well. I have quite a lot of experience with different engines. I've been in Unreal and Unity and game engines written for projects, and I'm really enjoying Godot so far. My biggest gripe is probably the Control Z, that it deselects the object.
Oh, right.
I think that's the worst one for me, surprisingly. No, but it's a really nice engine to work in, and it's open source, which is just awesome. I feel like most of our pipeline is sort of open source or one-time purchase programs at this point.
Godot is a really cool engine. being open source, I really got into the work that I do now because I learned Blender, being another really awesome open source program that allows you to create a lot of things in 3D that fit really well into a game asset pipeline. Godot has felt very kind, and the community has really kind of exploded recently, which has allowed for very quick development of fixes for finding things that don't work great and then adding fixes to those. So it's been a really fun engine to work in.
Yeah.
The next question comes from M Toaster, who asked how to really get motivated to create a timeline and stick to it.
Well, do I have news for you?
Yeah, this one's funny to us because we've constantly had some deadline in mind of what seemed like, if the game is going to be this small, we'll put this much more time into it and finish it at this point. And invariably, we'll get closer and closer to that deadline and get so many more ideas that seem so fun to pursue and new things to work on. And beyond that, even because we're both independent, we're always creating our own other projects that might take more time. And so we've probably pushed back deadlines on this project at least 3 or 4 times now.
It's also worth saying that it's not really pushing them back in a way that's like, oh no, you guys would have a game by this time. It would probably be something, but like with what we want to do with the whole thing, it is a good thing that we push them up and actually let it cook for the time it deserves. So it's more that we didn't really have deadlines to begin with, and we've been saying like, oh, now we're going to show the demo at this event, now we need to have the demo done for this, and then we kind of check that off. And then like in the case right now as well with the Steam demo going up quite soon, we're sitting down and polishing that up until it's out. And those kinds of deadlines are great for motivation, I think. But if we are looking at deadlines like, oh, this is a 2-month sprint that has these tasks in it, then we're not the right people to talk to.
And I think just being independent developers in such a small team, there's not as much of a pressure on those deadlines because we are very self-sufficient and self-reliant. It obviously would be so different if we had a publisher that we were working with that might be giving us a bit more stress about like the amount of time we're allowed to work on the game and when it needs to be done and what kind of promotional deadlines we need to hit for the sake of having stuff for IGN features and stuff like that.
We are also in a little like special position with the fact that we do have an audience already, so we don't really have to make the game and start making content about the game to kind of let people know that we exist. We have our own little bubbles of people that appreciate our work, which is super fortunate, I guess, in this case, because we can really spend the time working on what we are passionate about in the game, and that we have an audience that kind of trusts us with that, which is it's not a very common thing, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see how the whole development process unfolds with the release and everything. That is something I've been just thinking about lately since we've showed the demo. A lot of people have been asking about our strategy for finding people, and I'm like, well, there are people following the development already, so it's kind of it's funny to see how happy people are when we are happy about what we're making. Kind of.
It's interesting to think in a traditional sort of development, you might make a game and hope that you find people with it. And we're kind of in this position where we've found a lot of people who connect with our art. So now we have to make a game to give something back to let people play and be able to experience
is also a strong word.
Well, I think I think of it in that way of like it'd be one thing if we were just kind of making this and it didn't really seem like anybody cared about it or whatever.
That's true.
But to the extent that we've shared it and shared the art from it and seen the enthusiasm from our audiences who follow for our music and art, it's exciting that we'll be able to have a demo out soon.
I think you people deserve a game in the style at this point. I think it's more of that. No, but it's fun to consider. But like with motivation as well, I think just we are very fortunate to be able to do what we do full time, sort of. I just switched over to full time on the game, and it kind of breeds creativity to just have creative people around you that you can bounce ideas off of and that trust you with your ideas, sort of. So I think if I have anything around that, it's like try to do your thing until you find other people that appreciate that thing, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You will look back on it in 10 years and be like, oh, I should have done that different, or like, so just creating stuff is the important part, and you'll get there sooner or later with like the quality of work, and if you enjoy what you're doing, you're probably gonna kind of feel motivated to keep doing it.
Yeah, I think as far as motivation as it relates to a timeline, of course, like giving yourself targets to hit and goals for, every new year you say, I'm going to do this year and I'm going to do this. I think it's great to have that motivation, but I also think if it's a thing that you feel like you're struggling to find, in my experience, like with this game even, like there will be things we're working on that seem less than fun or seem maybe not so necessary, or maybe somewhat uninspiring compared to other ideas, and I think it's good to really follow your inspiration more so than whatever maybe arbitrary idea you feel could hack your brain into feeling more motivated.
And I feel like the brain often tells you not always the right thing to do, but also it often like leads you in the right direction if you learn how to listen to it. So if you are feeling unmotivated or working on a project that might not seem right, maybe you should like look into what you do enjoy about the project and why you are working on it, because sometimes it's worth changing things up a little.
Well, okay, let's move on to our last big question here. From Jisukimoto asks, when you inevitably release a vinyl record to go with the game, can you also release a CD?
I think the CD is gonna come first. I'm releasing parts of the album as singles on streaming overall, and I will be continuing to do that until we release the demo. And when the demo is released, there will most likely, I can't promise anything yet, but be a little album to go along with it for the game. And with that release, I really love doing my little handmade CDs. So it's probably going to be hard to stop me from doing a CD release. And I'm really excited about doing that. So a CD release will definitely come. And depending on how big the album is and include in it and how long we're going to work on the game and everything, there is no timeline for a vinyl yet. It might be worth doing, two LP vinyl when the game is fully out, or maybe this one ends up being good enough for a single or whatever we end up doing. But the CD is definitely going to come sooner or later. As a proud owner of a Dream Merchant CD, I look forward to that one. But I'm sending a couple with you back to the US as well. Yes. Me and Megan are going to be at Small Art this year in Seattle, and we'll do our best to have some CDs to grab there for any folks around the area that would like to pick up a little CD of some of the music from the game. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be posting more about physical releases and stuff soon. Do you want to do some quickfire ones? Yeah, I have a couple to start with. Okay. Yeah. So now, rapid fire question round. Can we see more concept art? It's so wonderful. Yes, here's more of it. Snowdrop asks, what is Bucket Guy's name? Bucket Boy. Bucket Boy, yeah, get it right. How many sand does Bucket Boy eat on a daily basis? I think he used to eat a lot of sand, but he probably has gotten better. He's eating his broccoli and other vegetables now, so maybe 5 to 10, yeah. Is the game going to be level-based at all, or achievements more so besides plot? I would say it's more achievement, not so much, progressing through a lot of levels. And we have the question, Crabjamin, and yes. Yes. That is true. Yes, Crabjamin, confirmed. Oh, what's your favorite random small detail in the game? Ooh, that's hard. I love drawing the little star, like moss things on everything. Yeah, I think that's fun. And just all the hand-painted textures with their little details, it's so fun too. I think for me it's the crabs. I don't know if you can call them small, but they are small. They are so good. I love them. What is the writing process for the game's text? It's both of us writing down random ideas, and then maybe half of them actually will end up in we end up correcting each other's things until we have the characters. Yeah, it's very spontaneous. This one, will lyrics be included in the game? I'm imagining puzzle portions where you finish rhymes.
Probably not. I think we like to keep things as pictographic as possible for the puzzles because, you know, we do want the game to be localized, and it's hard to make those kind of lyrical puzzles work in every language. Favorite Adam Sandler movie? Probably Happy Gilmore.
Yes.
he's never watched why he can't answer this.
Yeah, how do you keep the game cohesive and focused when the development is such a huge task? I think just the fact that we're both super excited at working on the game, and the fact that it's kind of telling us where it wants to go now. We have a graphical style, a musical style, and kind of the mechanics in place. So just having all of that in a little cohesive package really helps it keep being cohesive and staying cohesive through development.
How do you learn to make games in the first place? I'd say just watch some YouTube tutorials. I learned everything just from subreddits and Discord servers and YouTube and Googling things.
I did study game development, and I've been doing internships at places, but most of it has been self-taught. From during that time, you learn a lot, and then taking that information for your own projects is kind of valuable. What's Pearl's favorite game? I bet Pearl plays like Animal well, for sure.
Yeah, I think Pearl would enjoy Animal. I think
Game Boy Advanced Edition, right?
There's also part of me that thinks that Pearl would enjoy Pikmin.
Pearl would play Pikmin.
Yeah. I feel just something aesthetically about it, and
Yep.
Yeah, I want to say Pikmin. Okay, final answer. Does Bucket Boy's parents also wear buckets on their heads?
That is for you to see in the final game.
Yeah, we're not going to give away all the secrets of the game. It's
too many questions.
too many. You can't say that. What's the studio called?
Bryson McBean and Tottomori.
If it does have a studio name, we used we used to have our sticker club Willy Wah, and we actually used the support email dedicated to that on the Steam page. So maybe it's Willy Wah.
Willy Wah featuring Laura.
Yeah,
of course.
Laura's not entirely uninvolved in the game, so we can call it Willy Wah. Is there going to be multiplayer ever? Probably not. It's very hard to imagine a world where this game will be multiplayer. But not to say that there won't be aspects where you might want to involve your friends in some sense. What programs art thou using? We're using Godot and Blender, and
I'm using Substance Painter, and then for the music, it's a lot of recorded stuff, and I use Fruity Loops as my main DAW.
Yes, I personally enjoy Ableton, but I'm not doing quite as much music. I think that wraps it up for our rapid fire question section. Thank you so much for watching our little Q&A video and checking out our game and listening to us yap about it.
Wishlist it on Steam. The demo will be out in about a month.
It's in the next month. Yeah. In a month or so, we'll have a demo. You can play on Steam. You can go wishlist the game. Helps us out a lot. And of course, any links to socials and places where you can listen to the music will all be in the description below. So thank you so much for all your support, and we'll catch you guys in a different time in a different place.
Bye.
All your stickers are going on their way.